We are live. How you doing, buddy?
Yeah, I'm really good, mate. You okay?
Yeah, I'm good, man. I'm really, really good. And you know what? This week, no small talk. Let's jump straight into it because I need to know your thoughts on Lovecraft Country. Go.
I just absolutely loved it, and despite what I was saying before about pacing myself and not binge watching, and I'm really disciplined and do one a week. I couldn't
Yeah.
believe it when they said one every week. I
Yeah,
couldn't.
that was really funny because
Oh man,
we talked about it on Twitter, didn't we? And then
yeah, we did. That's right. Yeah,
someone else replied.
they
I don't know
mentioned
if it
someone
was
mentioned
them
it, didn't
or
they? They
you. Yeah,
mentioned,
someone said about
and I
are
said,
they all available? Yeah, you said. I think you
"Wait,
said.
wait a minute, what?"
Yeah, and I was like, hold on. What do you mean they're all available? I've only seen one episode. I believe HBO do, right? Because this is produced by HBO. And I believe they are like very strict on that. They are one a week TV. They done it with Game of Thrones, obviously massive success with that.
I think
Love the show.
as we get into this, I think it will get a lot easier to stick by the one a week. But I absolutely loved it. Really, really loved it. I think monsters aside, it really hit me how gritty and real it is, and it really brought racism to life to me. And I know that's a weird thing to say because obviously you hear about what goes on in the world now, and sometimes maybe you see it, you know how bad it was in the 50s in America, but until you really see it, you can't really appreciate it. And they've done it so brilliantly. There's nothing subtle about it. I mean, it's just there in your face.
Yeah.
But I think they've done it quite sensitively as well. It's not gratuitous or anything like that. It just is how it was, I would imagine. And I thought that was brilliant. I would even go so far as to say, I mean, I don't want to spoil it for people, but obviously we know there are monsters in it. I could have almost done away with the monsters. I have to say, I was enjoying it so much, just as it was about this guy searching for his dad to the backdrop of racism in America, that I kind of forgot that this was at the end of the day a horror series and would have Lovecraftian monsters in it. I just thought it was fantastic.
Yeah, do you know, I've got a second everything you're saying. If we're talking the first episode,
That was brilliant.
it was great. And for those of you out there that might not have seen it, or and those that have seen it, it was mainly revolved around them starting off their adventure, but
Yeah,
there was this
yeah,
underlining theme of sundown towns.
yes,
And something I found very, very interesting about this, and again, this is why it's so important for art to bring these up, and especially in the modern day, is there was a lot of talk online and a lot of people I saw, especially on Twitter, talking about this, where there was a lot of people that believed Sundown Towns was this fictional story element that was created for this
mm.
TV series. And it was very, very interesting seeing the dialogue where it was like, no, 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 like this was real. That is terrifying.
Yeah,
That is absolutely terrifying. And then I completely agree with you, as in seeing that on screen and watching it. And they done such a good job in the first 15 minutes, half hour of
yeah,
really, really connecting you with the characters. So then when there is this, and again, no spoilers for anyone that hasn't seen it, but there's this scene that is almost like a beat the clock scene, right? To do with a
yeah.
sundown.
That was super
Oh
tense.
man, and it was so tense because you really felt for the characters.
Yeah,
You really, really felt for the characters. And I have to admit, I've got to kind of agree with you. Like when the monsters and everything show up, yeah, it was cool, but I was almost like, oh damn, I kind of wanted to see where this went with.
yeah. I forgot about it. I was so, I forgot I was watching a horror series, and I was so invested in the
Yeah.
characters. To me, it was just a really gritty drama, thriller, but completely forgot about it. And don't get me wrong, I've liked the supernatural element, and that comes out much more in the second episode.
Yes.
But that first one, wow, it really hooked me. Do you want to give just a little overview of what the series is actually about?
Yeah, I'll give an overview of the story of the series, but then also I find it really interesting about the just the overall setup, right? And the fact that it's called Lovecraft Country and it is based in 50s America with very, very high racial tensions. Because I think that's a really interesting point, but I'll get to that in a minute. Yeah, so the setup of the series is it follows a guy who's just returned from the war, and he returns finding out that his dad's gone missing, his dad's gone on a bit of an adventure and he's not really sure where he is. So then episode one kicks off with him and two other people starting on this journey to go and find his dad, and they have to venture into what is called Lovecraft Country. Now, this brings me on to my second point of why this is a very, very interesting concept to me, and this is why it stuck out to me a little while ago when this was first announced. Within horror, and it is undeniable, H.P. Lovecraft is a huge influence on everyone. You know, I've spoke openly many times about how you don't even have to have read someone's work or seen some filmmakers' films to even be influenced by them, because the people you were influenced by were probably influenced by these guys, right? Like, I I am personally, as a filmmaker, I am influenced by H.P. Lovecraft, but more so than that, I'm influenced by someone like Del Toro. But Del Toro is extremely influenced by Lovecraft.
Not to dwell on it too long, but there's a whole genre of Lovecraftian
Right,
horror. You could
right,
argue, I know it's one of our topics, but The Thing as an
right,
example of
right.
Lovecraftian
Exactly.
horror.
Well, it's 100% Lovecraftian horror.
Mm.
100% Lovecraftian horror. That idea of one of his greatest quotes was, I'm going to butcher the quote, so I'm sorry, but it's something along the lines of, our greatest emotion is fear, and our greatest fear is the fear of the unknown. Unfortunately, while H.P. Lovecraft has influenced all of horror, he also was a very, very flawed human being. He was extremely racist. And I'm not talking about, where you go, well, it was a product of the time.
Yeah.
No, no, no. He was racist to the point where people of his time were telling him, you're a bit extreme. He was horrid. And there are, we're not going to dive into it too much because this isn't a full HP Lovecraft episode, but actually in the future we might go there, because
That'd
I
be
do
cool.
find it, I do find it interesting. But a lot of his stories, a lot of people have dug into and believe that a lot of them do revolve around racism, and it was him
Yes.
writing about that. What I find very, very interesting about this show is Jordan Peele, who is the producer of this show. He himself is obviously been influenced by Lovecraft. He understands the influence Lovecraft has on horror. Yet he also is holding a mirror up to it and saying, yeah, we can be influenced by these people, but we also have to accept that they were horrible, racist people. Creating this story of middle America, 1950s, huge racial tensions, but it revolves around Lovecraftian themes and monsters and mythology. To me, that is really smart, really intelligent, and a really, really great way of dealing with very controversial heroes.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with that. I think, funnily enough, what really stood out for me was before I believe we were talking about this offline again before we'd even watched the series, or the first two episodes rather. We were talking about Lovecraft and how it's really difficult to separate. You have that kind of moral dilemma. You
Yeah,
you, you know what a horrible, horrible person he was, but at the same time, you kind of feel guilty for looking at his work and you know praising him as such a fantastic
of course.
imaginative writer. But what really struck me, like literally in the first 20 minutes of the first episode, Tick Freeman, Jonathan Majors, the main character,
Yeah,
he's holding a book and he's actually talking about a conversation he had with his dad, where his dad's questioning how he can read this stuff, and
yeah,
he goes through the whole thing of separating the artwork from the person. And I thought that was very clever, and bang, they hit it with you really early on as well.
yeah. They really, really do. And I think what's really, really important about this is, from my understanding, this isn't, and I do think this is important, and I openly say this as a white man. It is important that this story is coming from people of color, both in front of and behind the camera, because
Yes, yeah,
it's fine for white people to say, oh yeah, but separate the man from the art. Yeah, that's easy for us to say, because the horrible stuff he's saying isn't about us.
yes,
It's a
that's right.
very, very different story when you're telling someone, oh yeah, separate the man from the art, but you also know that this man probably never, ever, ever wanted his story in your hands. Like, that's a
Yeah,
very,
that's interesting. Yeah,
yeah, that's a very important
what would
topic.
he think about seeing this series based on his work? from that
Oh yeah.
perspective. I
Oh,
mean,
he would.
obviously, he would not be a happy bunny.
No, nowhere near. I mean, he would. He would definitely hate it, but you know, good, really,
Yeah,
because
exactly. Yeah,
he was a. I don't know. I don't want to say he was a great writer because I don't think he was a great writer. I think actually some of his writing's quite flawed, but he had a great imagination,
it's his
and
imagination, isn't
yeah,
it?
it was his imagination and the way he built mythology.
I have to say quickly as well. I've got to raise this up. Courtney B. Vance, who plays Uncle George, I think
Oh
he's
yes.
fantastic. He's
Oh, he's so good.
absolutely my favourite character.
Oh, he's so good.
Absolutely, I think he's brilliant.
So good. Do you know what the whole cast?
No, they're all
The
fantastic. But
whole cast for this,
he just
from
makes me he just makes me smile.
yeah,
He just makes me smile.
from
And
episode 1 all the way through to episode 2, when you meet some newer characters in episode 2. Again, I just think it's really, really smart casting.
I mean, again, I don't want to. I'm not going to give anything away in the story, but in the very first episode, he kind of gets split up from the rest of them, and I found myself thinking, Uncle George, no,
Yeah,
no, go and
yeah,
meet up with them. Where are you?
yeah. Exactly, exactly. Yeah, man, it's great, and I
Yeah, I love
can't
it,
wait
love
to
it.
see where this goes. And for those out there that haven't watched this and are able to watch it, are able to find it somewhere, please do. Please go and watch that first episode. I guarantee you're going to be hooked. And yeah, I imagine weekly, we're probably going to have some discussion about this because I think it's the hottest thing on TV at the minute.
It's fantastic, absolutely fantastic. I can't recommend it highly enough. Just however you can watch it, go and watch it.
Go and watch it. Let's move on and not spend an hour on Lovecraft Country because I know we could. We
Yeah,
definitely could. So let's touch on the indie spotlight trailer that I sent over this week. So this week it was a film called The Swerve, which we've previously brought up because it is a film that is playing the Digital Fright Fest event, which officially kicked off today with what's more of a preview night today and then kicks off tomorrow. The Swerve is the closing film of the festival. It plays on Monday, and they've just released this trailer because they've just announced their distribution deal. Essentially, that they've been picked up for distribution, which I'm so happy for because, like I said, this is possibly my favorite film of the year. And I saw it back in January, and to think that we're now in August and they didn't have a distribution deal, I was going crazy. I was like, is there any hope in the world for a good film? But yeah, they're going to put it everywhere. So that's great. So I sent you a trailer.
yeah,
First time you've seen anything from the film, right?
absolutely. Yeah, and to be honest with you, I forgot that it was the one we were talking about that's coming up on Fright Fest. So I'm really
Oh,
pleased
okay,
to
interesting.
watch it. I completely didn't realise. Even once I watched it, I thought this seems. I can't have seen this film because just from reading the premise of the film, I thought this
Right.
sounds
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
very different from the trailer you sent me last week. Very
Yes, very,
understated. I like a
very.
nice, more slow burn, psychological kind of thing. Yeah, I think it looks really good. The again, I feel like we're using this phrase a lot, but I can't help it. It's true. It does not look like what I would expect an indie to look. I mean,
No.
this really looked the very top quality. I would expect to see this in a massive distribution. Actually, it reminded me of a kind of an Ari Aster film, just the way it was shot and the color palette and that kind of thing. And I think it looks great. Really looking forward to seeing it at Fright Fest.
I said it before on our other episode, and I'll say it again. For me, two picks of Fright Fest are Ghost Waits and the Swerve. The Swerve is just, it's incredible. I don't, it's one of them situations where I really don't want to say too much because
Is
when
there
I saw,
something? Is there something you can liken it to without giving it just in terms of
ooh,
feel or mood rather than storyline? So I suppose obviously I've only seen the trailer. Was I way off with my Ari Aster comment?
no, not too much, not too much. In the set, it's not as possible supernatural
It
elements.
can get very surreal, can't it?
Yeah, yeah, very. That's the right word actually. Very surreal. This is very, very clever at watching a woman descend into utter desperation, like utter defeat, to where it's kind of Desperate Housewives in the most bleak sense. It's
Mm,
it's
mm.
so powerful, man. It's so powerful. And again, I really don't want to say too much purely because if anyone was on the fence about what to watch on Monday at Fright Fest, or maybe you're not even. watching some films at Fright Fest, but you can buy a single ticket for this and stream this on
And
Monday night.
it's a fiver, isn't it?
It's a fiver.
That's yeah.
It's a fiver. It's a fiver to stream any of the single films at Fright Fest. $5.99, I believe. If you're free on Monday night, I think it plays about 7-8 p.m. If you're free, do it. $5.99 gets you a link to the film. Just do it. Just watch it. And you know, I really am going to leave it there because I want you to go in like I did when I saw it at Panic Fest. I just went in cold. I didn't know what it was. All I knew was the guys that made it were there, and I knew this was a film that was getting a little bit of buzz from people that had seen it. But that was all I knew. It's so powerful. It's so outstanding. If you do want to know a little bit more, obviously we're dropping the trailer link down below. But the trailer doesn't.
The trailer gave nothing
No,
really
no.
to me at all, other than it does a good job of building the kind of suspense and the tension. You know, it really gets your interest. And yeah, I mean, as I say, just from reading about it, it was one that I wanted to see. Obviously, you said how good it was.
Yeah,
In I don't know if it was the last episode or the one before, but you told us how what a great film it
yeah.
is. Yeah, I'm really excited for it.
Honestly, you're gonna love this, and we're gonna talk about it in the future. Go and watch it if you've got the time. If you're free on Monday night, go. Get your ticket. Also, it helps support these guys. The more people that watch it, the better. The more people that rant and rave about, the better. I did have the pleasure of meeting these guys. I ended up going out for lunch with them or breakfast, and it was incredible. Like they're such nice guys. They're really really down to earth. They honestly don't even know the absolute gem they've made. Like they were so humble, and so they were way more complimentary about like my short film, and they were more bothered about talking about my short film than
Mm,
like peddling their own stuff. And that's incredible,
yeah,
man, because because I'm watching this going, well, one day I might make a film that good, hopefully. I don't know, but you're sitting at a table with them and they don't even care about talking about their film. They just want
that's
to know
really cool.
what you're doing. Yeah, really really great guys, really really amazing people, and definitely want to go and watch. And yeah, I'm going to leave it there. If you want a
Yeah,
little
awesome. I mean,
tease, check out the
I
trailer.
yeah, I mean, I'm going to be watching it for sure.
Without doubt. Right, I'm going to let you pick up the next one. I'll give it a little bit of an intro, but it's news that, from what I understand, dropped today and was confirmed today, and that is that Netflix have confirmed their long rumored live action Resident Evil series.
This was news to me, and I'm not so excited about this. The reason is I was never a fan of the Resident Evil films. They didn't hit the mark for me. I know they're well loved, massive franchise, like the games. And obviously, I'm being slightly unfair, because I'm sure that the series, many years after the films, is going to have nothing to do with those kind of things. To be fair, I think the premise of this series sounds very very interesting. The whole two timelines thing, but I'll be open minded about it, and obviously I'll give it a try. But if I'd just seen it come up, I probably wouldn't go out of my way to watch it. If I'm being completely honest.
Yeah, do you know what? Again, man, I kind of agree with you. I thought this was quite newsworthy. It dropped today. A lot of people were talking about it.
Mm,
But I genuinely just wanted your opinion on it because I wasn't too excited about it. So I just wanted to see where you would come from. I just don't know. And again, like I said it last week, I think, right? Like, prove me wrong. I never want anything to be bad. I never want anything to
yeah,
be bad. And I don't think it will be bad. It's just like, do we need it? And especially I believe the guy that is directing or producing the first few episodes is someone from The Walking Dead.
yeah,
So great
no,
pedigree,
yeah.
right? But do we? I don't know. Is that not just kind of the same thing?
It could be. I mean, I kind of, yeah. I mean, I suppose it's more monstery Resident Evil. I mean, I know there's zombies in it as well, but you've got those kind of
Of
I can't
course, yeah,
can't even remember what they're called, but those kind of big skinless cat-like monster things.
yeah. It's more. There's definitely more like supernatural
Yeah,
elements.
yeah, and I think the premise of it and the fact that his name passes me, but the guy who was working on The Walking Dead, I love that series. That's what gets me interested in it. If we're basing it on the games, I'll take it or leave it. Traditionally, game to film crossovers aren't great. Apart from, as an aside, I think Silent Hill's excellent. I know that's not everyone's opinion, but I really enjoyed that. I can't. If ever I see the Resident Evil films, I don't even think I've seen them all. And I'm not slating the films; they just didn't do it for me. I couldn't get into it. I didn't find the CGI work scary. It wasn't for me.
Completely agree, man. I do hope that, and look, by no means do I think this will be bad, purely based on that premise. I do think they've got something there. The split timeline I find quite interesting. I like the idea of the. I mean, and again, I could be wrong. I haven't played Resident Evil in some time, but this isn't following any of like the big hitters, right? From the Resident Evil
No, I don't think it's
series.
following anything. I think it's just using the Raccoon City and the
Yeah,
Umbrella
yeah,
Corporation. No, not Umbrella Corporation. Yeah, it is Umbrella
yeah. It is.
Corporation,
It
isn't it?
is the Umbrella
And
Corporation. Yeah.
it's just using those things. I would imagine we'll see
Right.
some
Okay.
iconic
Yeah.
monsters.
Well, touching on the monsters, I think you touched on it there a minute ago, and this is where it sinks or swims for me, is the use of practical effects versus CGI. Now, I'm by no
Yeah,
means
yeah,
saying don't use CGI. There is definitely a place for CGI. There is definitely a way to use CGI to enhance the overall experience. But I think if we're gonna get a TV series where it's 100% CGI monsters, I'm not interested in that.
doesn't
I'm
matter how
just
far
not.
it's come, and it does. CGI can look amazing now, but it's got to be in the right places. And I've said this
Yeah.
before. Look at the Lord of the Rings, and they got it spot on. Even we've come on leaps and bounds in the quality of CGI, but you still watch those films.
Well, here's the problem with CGI, man. It's like we come on leaps and bounds, and yeah, it looks great now, but in 5 years they would have come on leaps and bounds
Yeah,
as well, right? So
yeah,
it
that's
like
true.
it very, very quickly outdates itself, and also the style of CGI changes. The okay, are we going really, really realistic, or are we trying to not go realistic? It's that everyone talks about the uncanny valley with CGI, where it's the thin line between what's real and what's not. It's why we can't do people. Why people are very, very hard to do with CGI, because we know exactly
Yeah.
what people look like.
Well, even the digital de-aging nowadays, it can look good if used limited,
Yeah.
like they've done in the Star Wars films, Grand Moff Tarkin and Princess Leia. I think it's very good. You look at something like The Irishman, the Scorsese film recently. I really enjoyed the film, but sometimes I felt the de-aging wasn't quite working.
Yeah, I felt with a character like Joe Pesci, well, an actor like Joe Pesci, it worked very, very well for his character.
Mm,
With De Niro's character, yeah, I thought it was a bit in and out in The Irishman. I feel like the
yeah,
technology
yeah.
was a little. I mean, it was amazing, and it was like in terms of a technical
It's
marvel,
remarkable.
incredible, right? Absolutely incredible. But then it's the same with Rogue One, like you were saying with Tarkin and Leia.
Yeah,
I thought for the most part Tarkin was really, really well, and I've only recently gone back and watched that film again. And Tarkin for me, the eyes are a little bit dead at times, but the
yeah.
the overall look really works. But Leia, the de-aging of Leia hasn't held up that well. Like
Mm,
a good few years later, you go in, you're like, oh, it's a little bit rough,
yeah,
And I think that's the problem where, like you touched on with Lord of the Rings, or what we're going to talk about next, actually, the thing, anything like that, where real practical effects were used. The reason that still holds up is it is real. Like to a certain
yeah,
extent, it's
yeah.
real. If it's prosthetics, if it's miniatures,
I mean,
whatever it
wasn't
may
even
be.
weren't the armies real people, but digitally repeated in
Yes,
different positions?
yes, yes,
So it was computer trickery, but
yeah.
they were real people.
Well, but that's where, in my opinion, you have a very, very smart filmmaker
Oh yeah,
where they know what the limits of the technology are and how far they can push it. Now, granted, filmmakers can undo their own genius, and I feel like Peter Jackson done exactly that with the Hobbit films. He
mm,
went way too far the other way, exactly the same as George Lucas done with the prequels, right? He makes these huge strides in the original trilogy, and then in the prequels goes way, way too CGI heavy. Now, granted, no one was doing it at the level he was doing it back then, but again, the problem is it doesn't future-proof itself very well.
yeah. I do think. part of the issue is the extent rather than the quality. I mean, the quality's got to be good, but it doesn't have to be perfect if it's used in the right way. I watched The Matrix last week, literally the first time in years, and that film's over 20 years old now, and it still looks amazing. If you really look at it, really look at the CGI effects, they're not a patch on today, but because of the way it was used, it works. It still works
Yeah,
brilliantly well.
of course. Well, there's some like a lot of the stuff again in the Matrix was digital enhancement. It wasn't.
Yeah,
It wasn't until the sequels that they started going like full CGI, like the one where Neo's fighting all of the Agent Smiths
yeah.
on the rooftop. Like that looks really janky because it was like full CGI and it just doesn't work. But then if you think about what made that first film so incredible, like bullet time and the slow motion and stuff like they're real. That's real actors that are being captured in slow motion,
I
and
suppose I'm
it's
thinking of the things like when Neo puts his fingers into the mirror and the mirror covers his whole body and
oh
then goes
right, yeah,
down
that's
his
such a
throat.
good effect. That's a
You know,
great effect.
it still looks really good.
Yeah, it
Still looks
does.
really
It
really
does
good.
look really, really good. But again, I think it's that balance of
Yeah,
mixing CGI with a real world environment. And you know what, like, and this is probably the only time I'm ever gonna praise him on a recording, but I actually think that's what Michael Bay does really well. Is like, say what you want about like the Transformers films and stuff, but I think the reason why a lot of that CGI blends really well is he knows that, like, if you actually look at the way he films stuff, he films it all on real locations, or he films it on really huge sets. All the explosions are real. Everyone in the scene is real, and then they just put in the transformer. So like when you're watching it, your brain is like, well, I know all that's real. So like, do you know, like, it's not there, right? It's a giant
yeah.
transformer, but it blends so much better than when the whole environment is, because that's what I was saying about the uncanny valley thing. If you see something that's been CGI created that you with your own eyes have seen, so this is why, in my opinion, like digital fire and stuff never works, because we
Mm.
know what fire looks like. We know how fire behaves. There's a certain element to it that just they have not been able to capture. The problem with that is when you do try and do it with CGI, your brain goes, well, no, I know that's not real. So to bring it back round to Resident Evil,
We've done it again, haven't we, Scott?
we've
We've
done it again,
rambled
mate.
off on one.
We've done it again. It's the way, mate. It's the way forward. I'm telling you. Yeah, I don't know. I'm interested to see where this goes. I think for me at the minute, not that interested.
I mean, I'm I,
Depending,
I'm going to watch it when it comes out. I will watch it.
well, depending on who they cast as well. If you were to
Yeah,
cast some outstanding actors, you might have my attention again. If you were to say to me, "We're bringing in so and so to direct these episodes," well, now you've got my interest.
like Michael Bay, you mean?
I wouldn't mind seeing that. I've got to admit. I've got to admit. It would be terrible, but there's part of me that wants to see that.
Do you
Just
know
Michael
what?
Bay doing a
Mi-
Resident Evil film.
Michael Bay might not be Stanley Kubrick, but he's not trying to be. He makes action films. He makes big box
Do you know
office
what, that
stuff. Bring
bang
in the cash. That's what he does.
you are bang on. You are bang on. He knows what he's doing. He doesn't try and pretend he's doing anything more. And honestly, yeah, he doesn't care what anyone says because he's too busy counting all of his money.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm not saying that's like what you should be aiming for. It's not what I aim for in my film career, but that is what he's aiming for,
And
and
he
he
does it
he,
very well. No
he
one can
does it
accuse him
very,
of
very well. Yeah,
not
he does
doing
it very,
Michael
very
Bay
well.
well.
Yeah.
And that's the thing with the Transformers films. People forget that this isn't just a nostalgia property. This is a toy that was so bad at being sold that they had to make the cartoon to sell the toy.
Oh
So
yeah,
it's got
yeah,
its whole history is sell, sell, sell.
yeah. Of
So
course it is.
you
Yeah,
couldn't think of anyone better.
exactly. You now on the head, man. Now on the head.
Do you know, it'd be good to see a Tarantino Transformers though, with Samuel Jackson voicing
Do you
Optimus
know, like
Prime.
a few years ago, I remember seeing a rumor about. It was obviously just horseshit, right? But I remember seeing a rumor about how Tarantino is being courted to write the screenplay for a Transformers film. It was never going to happen, but I was like, oh my god, could you
Oh, can you
imagine?
imagine the music?
Could you imagine? Oh, it'd be great.
Just the dialogue.
Oh, the dialogue alone.
Do you know,
Do it.
please,
Do it.
someone out there who's really good with wizardry, they should take the dialogue from Pulp Fiction and do it over the top of Transformers clips. That would
Oh,
be
we need
amazing.
that now. We need that. So in closing, man, what's your thoughts on Resident Evil?
Open mind.
Yeah.
I come at it with an open mind. I'm not too excited about it, but that premise, especially the second half that's set in the future, that's got me interested. And yeah, I'll give it a whirl.
Yeah. I agree with that, man.
I
I agree
think
with that.
though, because of my preconceptions, it's in danger of losing me if it don't hook me early on.
I'm optimistic, but I'm not expecting too much, if I'm honest. Which, oddly enough, brings me on to our next topic. The Thing remake slash reboot. I mean, do we need this?
Before we even start, I've got to say, John Carpenter's probably my favorite director,
Okay.
and I love his work. I love his work, and he is having some involvement with this film.
Right, yeah. So let's touch on a little bit of background of that. So
Very
he
very little we know
recently
though.
yeah, he recently received a Lifetime Achievement Award at Fantasia Film Festival.
Yes.
And in the interview, he was asked about Blumhouse's reboot of The Thing. And he says, and I quote, I think Jason is going to be working on The Thing, rebooting The Thing. I'm involved with that, maybe, down the road.
Mm.
That's literally all we know.
So it could be, as you know, it could be producer, it could be music. He does music for a lot of films, doesn't
He
he?
does. Yep. Yeah, he's been involved in a. I remember seeing a short film, a few years ago, and he done the music for that. I thought that was incredible that they got John Carpenter to like score their short film.
Wow.
Yeah, unbelievable. Yeah, so I don't know, man. What do you think?
Well, I mean, okay. First off, what's your feelings on the original?
Are you when you say original? Do you mean John Carpenter's or do you mean
John
how?
Carpenter.
Right. So this is the funny thing. This film has been remade like
Yes.
countless amounts of time. Right. So in terms of John Carpenter's The Thing, masterpiece, absolute stone cold masterpiece. I've touched on before how much I love Halloween. Halloween was my gateway into horror. Halloween is why I do what I do. However, The Thing is one of the greatest films ever made. It is some of, if not the greatest prosthetics works ever made. I just think it's a masterclass in everything. I really, really do. I really, really love the film.
So then, how did you feel about I think it was 2011, the sort of
Yeah.
prequel they made? How did you feel about that?
Oh man, do you know what? Like, I could actually talk about that one more because I was kind of excited about it from the point of view of I was a big fan of Tarantino's Death Proof,
Yeah.
and one of the standout performers in that was Mary Elizabeth Winstead, and she was cast as the lead in that film. So I was like, okay, good. And also, right, that's a huge plus because the original film has no women in it whatsoever. I
Yeah, that's true.
think
Yeah.
it I don't even think there were women on set. I don't think that was like by design. But I'm pretty sure like there's those stories out there of like it was probably like one of the most male heavy films in history. So I thought that was interesting. Okay, it's kind of going to be a prequel that sets up where the first film kicks off, female lead. Okay, interesting. And then they started making it and they started releasing images and video footage about where they went full prosthetics and they were all, everything was practical effects and it looked
Mm,
amazing. If
mm.
you've seen any of their video, amazing practical effects. And then during the editing process, apparently one of or a couple of the executives hated practical effects, not because they look bad, they just didn't like practical effects. They love CGI. They spent a ridiculous amount of money redoing all of the incredible effects with terrible CGI. I
So
don't
I mean,
think.
I actually enjoyed the film, the prequel they made. Obviously, not a patch on uh, John Carpenter's version of the thing. But I like the way it matched up to the original. I thought that was
Yeah,
very clever.
yeah,
You know,
yeah. I
the
did.
the chasing the dog at the end.
Yes.
The performances were brilliant. The CGI, I didn't hate it, but I didn't think it was anything to shout about either. I actually found it confusing.
Yeah,
I found that
yeah.
the CGI confused me because I couldn't quite work out what I was always looking at.
Of course.
And it kind of, I actually thought there was, whether there was all, I just felt like there was too much monster. Now, I'm assuming though that would have been the same with practical effects, because I'm assuming that they did the CGI over that. They've redone these scenes, or maybe they shoehorned in a bit more. I don't know, but I just felt like we saw too much of it, because you don't see the monster isn't there all the time
No.
in John Carpenter's version. It builds up to it as it should, whereas you're not far into the prequel before you're seeing people torn apart and
Yeah.
joined together, and
Yeah.
at times I thought it looked like it was more akin to that strange film Society, with the
I can
people
see
sort of
that.
blending into each
Yes.
other, and things like that.
I can
But
see that. Yeah.
yeah, so I enjoyed it. um so then when we come to this one, we don't know, is it a reboot, a sequel, a prequel? I would imagine it's either going to be a sequel or a reboot, depending on how much involvement John Carpenter is going to have in it. I'm open-minded. Remaking that film, it's like we've said before with remakes. You either do the same, as a continuation of the story, and give people what they want, or you redo it and do it from a completely different angle. And I don't see how you can do the thing from a different angle unless we get it from the perspective of of the thing.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe, but
I mean,
I can't really see how they could go different on this one.
I think this is why it's gonna, in my eyes, it's gonna be a reboot, and here's why it has to be a reboot. If you were to make a sequel to John Carpenter's, in all honesty, I don't think enough people care for that to be
Mm,
marketable. Like,
yeah,
because yeah,
you're right. Yeah, yeah.
you've got, like, if you're brutally honest, you've got your die-hard horror sci-fi fans that love that film, right? But we're in our like 30s, 40s. Some of these fans are in their like 50s, 60s, right?
Oh
They're
yeah.
not the people that make a lot of money going to cinema. It's teenagers that
Mm.
make your money going to cinema, 20-year-olds that make your money going to cinema. Are there enough teenagers and 20 somethings that really, really care about John Carpenter's The
Well,
Thing?
this is exactly
No,
it.
there's
Because you
not.
look at, it doesn't ever seem to come out, but I'm sure it's being done. Is the remake of Big Trouble Little China,
Right.
starring
Yeah.
Dwayne the Rock Johnson,
Yeah.
in what I assume is the Kurt Russell role. And I just think, from my perspective, I think, what the hell are you doing?
Yeah.
That film to me was absolutely perfect. I
Yeah.
love Big Trouble
Yeah.
Little China, but the people who are going to lap it up, they don't give a shit. They probably won't even know that there was a film before it. They'll
Well,
just see.
this is why it kind of confuses me. The whole issue around reboots and stuff. Like, The Thing is a real cult classic. But cult classics become cult classics because they're not huge box office hits,
Mm,
right?
mm.
Like, you can reboot and do sequels to Halloween because everyone loves Michael Myers. This I just don't see it. So here's where I kind of leave this, because it was something we touched on a minute ago, right? Or even right at the top of the show. The Thing is very heavily influenced on Lovecraft.
Mm.
Massively influenced on Lovecraft. The whole premise, the whole setup is Lovecraft. Why I don't see, and look, like, Jason Blum knows way more than I do about any of this stuff. But I don't see how there is so much more name value in just using the title The Thing than adapting another Lovecraft story within this same vein, right? Of a out in the middle of nowhere, bunch of people come across some kind of monster. They're all going insane. They're all paranoid. They're all, it's classic Lovecraft. But mark it on the whole Lovecraft angle, because there's been a huge resurgence of people reading Lovecraft. Obviously, Lovecraft Country has now brought it even more to the forefront. Why would you not try and make something original? I don't get it. You're never going to touch on what John Carpenter
Yeah,
done.
yeah, yeah,
And again, what John Carpenter done was a remake. Very
yeah,
different film,
yeah, yeah.
a vastly different film to Howard Hawks' film, but still, it was a remake. And they've constantly remade this film, and John Carpenter made a masterpiece. Don't touch the masterpiece. You don't need to. I just don't see where else this can go. It isn't a
It,
story
it's
that
um
warrants.
it's quite a strange one, isn't it? As you say, because it's not as if it's a it's a particularly hot property that people want to see. And I would liken it to there's another film of John Carpenter's which isn't as well known even as The Thing, but I think it's great. Is In the Mouth of Madness.
Oh,
Um, and if you imagine that, if someone said we're remaking it, straight, I just why?
that's Lovecraft as well, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Yeah,
all the tentacles and
yeah,
other dimensions and things. But yeah,
yeah.
it's and I just think why not that they are remaking it, but if they suddenly announced we're remaking The Mouth of Madness, I'd be very upset about that on my keyboard.
Yeah.
But I just think what's the point?
Well, there is that based on the what's the Lovecraft story called? At the Mountains of Madness. And
Yes, yes, yes,
hasn't Del
yeah,
Toro been trying to do that for years and years and years and
I
years,
believe so.
but
Yeah.
no one will give him any money to do it.
See, I think Del Toro could do a good Lovecraft horror.
Oh, he's the ultimate filmmaker to do it.
Yeah,
If there's anyone out
pretty
there that can
cool.
do it, it's him. It really is. Like, do that. Come on, Jason. Do that. Let's get a Lovecraft film made by Del Toro. I'd rather see that. I just don't know. Again, please prove me wrong. Please, like, just create an amazing reboot, an amazing
I
sequel.
mean, look, I'm gonna watch it, so I will watch it. But yeah, again, open-minded. I mean,
Yeah,
I love the film, so I will watch it and just hope that it's. I can't hope that it's brilliant. I just hope that it's not bad.
yeah. And not to, I never want to end on a downer. So the one thing I will say with this is, I think Jason Blum and Blumhouse especially, they know what they're doing. They have real horror pedigree. So yeah, if they are going to do this, man, they're going to know that people want the practical effects, right? They're going to know that was a misstep with the last one, getting rid of them practical effects. So I think if we are going to get anything from this, hopefully it's that.
Well, let's look at some of their other things. Are they full of CGI? Their other horror films? Not particularly.
No, not too much. No. Yeah.
So we could be looking at it wrong. I mean, you look at the positives, as you say, and if anyone's going to do it, they're a good company behind it.
Yeah. Let's hope so, man.
We're optimistic.
Yeah. Yeah. Optimistic. I rather them spend the money doing something else? Yeah, of course. But if they're gonna do it, hey, do the best you can, right?
Yeah,
Do the
exactly,
best you can.
exactly.
All right, buddy. It's time.
Oh, creepy link of the week. Well, I won't tell you what it is first, but I sent you a short piece of film by Jan Schwankmeyer, which I hope I've said correctly, who is a Czech animator, stop motion animation, puppeteer, filmmaker. What did you think of it?
Dude, I love this. Like, I loved,
Do you
loved,
know? Do you
love
know
this.
who Jan
See,
Schwankmeyer is?
no, but based on like this film, I feel like I've seen other work
He's
like
very
this.
he's been prolific in
Right.
this kind of animation
Yeah.
since the 1960s, the late
Right.
1960s.
Right. Okay.
He's about 85 years old now, and
Yeah.
he's just crowdfunded his last film, I believe, which is called Insect, and I think
Yeah.
it's based on Kafka's Metamorphosis.
Wow.
Um, all of his films are incredibly surreal, very, very, very surreal. None of them are all out scary, but they're very surreal and they can be very creepy. And probably the famous one that you see a lot of gifs of and little pieces of it is Jabberwocky.
Yes.
And that's the
Yes.
one where you've got these little dolls and they're eating lunch, and the lunch that they're eating is other doll parts, so arms and heads and feet and stuff, and it's
Yeah.
all stop motion done. That's
Right.
his
Yeah. Yeah.
most famous, I believe. What I sent you was a small clip of his take on Alice in Wonderland, and it was his first full length film. He'd done lots of short films before. I think this was 1990 or 1988.
Okay.
Yeah, his first full film, and he made it because he was very disappointed with all of the adaptations of Alice Through the Looking Glass, whatever the first
Wow.
book was. He wanted to make a much more surreal, dreamlike kind of film. And a much more dark, uncompromisingly dark at times. And yeah, so I sent you a little clip of that. What did you
So
think?
there's a full version
Oh
of
yeah,
this.
this is 3 minutes of a full film of Alice in Wonderland.
Wow.
It's called Alice in Czechoslovakian. I think it's something more like what Alice has or something like that.
Wow. See, I had no idea.
Yeah,
So
so
I know I've touched on previous episodes, but just for you guys and girls out there listening, the way I like Chris literally sends me these links moments before we're about to record. I watch it and then we start recording, right? We go live and we record. I don't have time to work out who these people are or research it. And if I'm honest, that's the way I like it.
yeah, it's good.
Because I love hearing these stories, man. And I had no idea there was like more to this, and now I need to see it.
You've got to check him out.
Oh my god,
He's got
dude,
like
I love this.
these three short films as well, very short films, which are called Food, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and they get progressively more explicit and more extreme. And I was actually going to send you Dinner, which was the more extreme one,
Right.
but I wasn't sure how you'd feel about having a link to that associated with the channel.
Yeah.
But it's check out all of his work. I mean, they're not easy watches. I think he's incredible.
Oh,
I
dude, I
think
love this. I thought this was
did you
there.
did you get the feeling of any kind of Alice in Wonderland vibes from it?
Kind of. I mean, at the end, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Like the way it ends is like, oh, okay, is that what
Did
you're trying to say? So yeah, like definitely at the end. But I tell you what I did. I actually got when was this made? Because I got a
1988?
88.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
Oh, that's interesting. Because I actually got a bit of Toy Story.
that's
Like some of the
interesting.
yeah, the like I don't know what you call them, like figures or whatever it is he uses.
See, is it too far fetched to imagine that people who have gone into animation as a career, the guys at Pixar, they must have studied Jan's work in
Oh,
art
without a
school?
doubt. Without well, I mean, Pixar is very, especially early Pixar, they're very well known for actually being very, very adult animators
Yeah,
and sneaking adult themes into
the original
Toy
Toy Story
Story.
had some very dark moment.
Oh yeah,
That
it's got
next
some
door,
great gags.
Jesus.
It's got some great gags in it. You know, it's still one of my favorites that most people still don't realize to this day. It just it blows my mind because it's so amazing. Is the when Woody is in Sid's room and all the little toys are coming out, that he's kind of like butchered, and you've got that toy that is Barbie doll legs that are wearing fishnets with a giant hook on the top of it,
Yeah,
and that's the gag of she's a hooker,
yeah.
and it's so great, and like still when sometimes when that comes up or whatever, people are like what, but yeah,
What
it's
what I like in Jan's version of Alice is if you saw, I mean, I don't know why there's like those skeletal guards chasing her around, but you'll notice there's the white rabbits there.
yes,
Um, at the beginning of the film, Alice, like real life Alice, is sitting in like her study or whatever at home, and she suddenly there's a white taxidermy rabbit in a case that comes to life, bursts out of the case and grabs some scissors and runs off, and then that's how she starts chasing him. What's interesting is, I believe, at the beginning of the film, is it says something like Alice is going to sleep. You'll need to close your eyes so you can see it too. And then, just a nice little surreal,
yes,
comment
yeah,
that, to enforce that kind of dreamlike
yeah,
nature to it. If you check out, Jan's actually got a YouTube channel, and that's where I got these little clips. So he's got clips of some of his films on his YouTube channel, and
right.
he's also got there's interviews with him. You can find Jabberwocky and a couple of his short films on YouTube.
See,
Uh,
Jabberwock is the one I've seen. That's the one
yeah,
where I'm
that's
watching this going, man, I've seen something before.
yeah,
I've seen something
exactly.
like this. Jabberwock is the one.
There's one that I thought you might like. Is they've got it's very old, it's very early '60s, and it's his take on Punch and Judy. And there's some
Oh
real,
wow.
real creepy, those monkeys with the symbols and that kind of thing.
Oh
Uh,
yeah, yeah.
and it looked, considering it's the '60s as well, it looks fantastic.
Oh, I
That's
love it.
that's the cool thing about his work. It looks the same throughout all of his career.
Of
It
course.
doesn't
Yeah.
look like he's changed a thing. He's just doing what he does.
It's so unique as well.
Yeah.
It's so unique. Everything about it, not just the way it looks, but the sound design and yeah, everything, man. I literally love this. Absolutely love. Out of everything you've sent me, it's probably my favorite link so far.
Really?
Yeah, without a doubt. It really, really worked for me. It really, really stuck with me. It genuinely has got, and again, I'm not going to ruin it for anyone, but there's a moment where I won't say exactly what happens, but it's all stop motion and all very fantasy. And then there's one moment where real life kind of comes into it a little bit.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
And that I was not expecting that. So like that happened, and I genuinely was just sitting here watching it. I went, oh, and for me to get vocal, like that's quite rare. Like I don't get vocal with films. I'm not that surprised that often to the point where I, vocally show that. But with this man, I did. I was like, oh, okay, I didn't see that coming. And it was, yeah, man, really, really worked for me.
Cool. If you could see the full film, it's really good.
Oh, I'm gonna hunt it down, man. I'm gonna hunt it. Honestly, this is one that really, really stays with me. Like this and the
Cool.
Teletubbies. I keep bringing the Teletubbies one up, but that's still with
Well,
Swerve.
I like
But
to change it up every week, and I've got to say, next week is not going to be for the faint of heart.
oh,
Bring a spare pair of underpants
well,
time.
that's a tease.
It's
That's a
it's
tease.
it's
I
pretty
like
bad,
that.
Scott. It's pretty
I like
bad.
that. Well, what a great way to end. I love that. What a great way to end. Bring a spare pair of underpants for next week. I can't outro better than that, Chris.
Well,
Like
there's the end for you.
you've ruined my job for me.
Ah,
Thanks, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in again. It's been real fun, this one, Chris. Every week just seems to
brilliant.
get better and better and be more and more fun. And yeah, well, we're already set up for next week. So I'm looking forward to that, buddy.
Yeah, it's going to be really good.
All right, guys. Thank you so much. And until next week, Horror Hounds, stay safe.
Cheers, guys.
Bye.